imagine that someone who was mugged would feel guilty, or that friends of a family that was robbed would tell them that it was ultimately their fault because they didn't have good enough security. Ridiculous, right? Of course. But for survivors of sexual assault like Laura Dunn, this is a reality. According to Joseph Shapiro, in his radio spot, Campus Rape Victims, A Struggle for Justice, published on the National Public Radio in February of 2010, Laura had had too much to drink on an evening of April of 2004. She was with two young men that she trusted, so she didn't think anything of it when they asked her to return to their apartment. They ended up sexually assaulting her as she slipped in and out of consciousness. Laura never reported the attack, first because she didn't understand what qualified as sexual assault, and second because she was worried about the kind of reaction she would receive from her friends and family. Laura was a student like us, attending the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Rape and rape culture are subjects that affect many of us very personally. When surveyed, almost 70% of Section 12 said that they had either been sexually assaulted themselves or they knew someone who had. It is because of stories like these that it is essential that we as a society begin the process to end rape culture. Now, part of the reason this is so important to me is because earlier this semester I joined SAVE, which stands for Supporting a Violence-Free Environment on Campus. Now today, I will be talking about what rape culture is, the problems associated with rape culture, and finally, what we can do to solve these problems. Now, most people are familiar with the concepts of rape and sexual assault, and they understand why these are such significant issues, but they're unfamiliar with the concept of rape culture. Now, rape culture, as defined by Rebecca Flintoft in her book, Violence Goes to College, published in 2001, rape culture is defined as a concept that links rape and sexual violence to the culture of a society, and in which prevalent attitudes and practices normalize, excuse, tolerate, and even condone rape. In addition, rape culture condemns the victims rather than the rapists. An excellent example of rape culture was the Steubenville High School rape, which occurred on the evening of August 11, 2012, in Steubenville, Ohio. A young high school girl was incapacitated by alcohol and was repeatedly and publicly sexually assaulted by her peers, Malik Richmond and Trent Mays. Now, the specific details of this sexual assault are a bit too gruesome to discuss in this speech. However, it is important to note the level of intoxication this girl had reached. Not only would she have been considered far too drunk to give consent, she was actually unconscious for the duration of the attack. Now, naturally, you would assume that people would have sided with her, but that was not the case. Both the social and the news media sided with her rapists. Teresa Ciagatanu and Rudy Francisco talked about the Steubenville rape in their piece, Sons, from the National Poetry Slam in 2013. They said, quote, "When the state of Ohio found two 16-year-old boys guilty of raping a 16-year-old girl, both boys cried their eyes out moments after the verdict. Every major media news outlet coddled them instead of the girl they raped. CNN was mourning over the death of their futures in football. They said nothing of the cemetery growing inside the body of the girl, nothing of the graveyard where she will bury her trusted men." End quote. The social media sided with the two rapists as well. These are just a couple of the examples of the tweets that followed the verdict. I'm not saying what they did isn't wrong, but it's not rape. It was the girl's fault. Steubenville, guilty. I feel bad for the two young guys, Mays and Richmond. They did what most people in their situation would have done. The Steubenville rape is just one example of rape culture. There are many other examples from Marshall University in their article, Rape Culture, accessed November 13, 2013. First, there's blaming the victim, saying things like, "She asked for it," or "He's a guy, obviously he wanted it." Second is trivializing sexual assault by saying things like, "Boys will be boys." There's tolerance of sexual harassment, inflating false rape report statistics, publicly scrutinizing a victim's dress, mental state, motives, and history, pressure on men to score, assuming that women get raped because they're promiscuous, assuming that men don't get raped, or only weak men get raped, and finally, refusing to take rape accusations seriously. This problem is one that's actually very close to home. According to the UW Whitewater Interpersonal Violence Survey results from 2006, 42% of women and 9% of men have experienced at least one form of sexual assault in their lifetime. And 17% of women and 5% of men have experienced at least one form of sexual assault while attending Whitewater. Sexual assault is clearly a problem on our campus, and rape culture just makes it worse. So what can we do to solve these problems? Well, first, we can spread awareness. Many people don't know about this problem. When surveyed, almost 70% of Section 12 said that they had never heard of rape culture. People inside and outside of our class don't know what rape culture is. These are intelligent and well-informed people. It's not their fault they don't know about the problem. It's now our job to spread awareness. Oops. There we go. Okay. The next thing that we can do is empower survivors, and this point is particularly essential. Survivors of sexual assault rarely get the support that they need. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you need to hear this message. It is not your fault you were sexually assaulted, regardless of the circumstances. What happened to you was awful and unacceptable, but you can recover, and this will not define you. If you need help, there's an excellent counseling service on campus at the health center. The third thing that you can do is join clubs. There's a club on campus called SAVE, which stands for Supporting a Violence-Free Environment. And during the fall, they worked on fundraising to spread awareness. And during the spring, they have an amazing program where survivors of sexual assault can come and share their stories. Now, in conclusion, rape and rape culture are unacceptable problems. But what sets them apart from other problems like them is that we can solve them. All it takes is people like us standing up to these ridiculous stereotypes and standing with survivors. Now today, I have talked about what rape culture is, the problems associated with rape culture, specifically how the media reacts to them, and how it impacts our society particularly. And finally, what we can do to solve these problems. Rape is one of the worst crimes that someone can commit. It's considered on par with kidnapping and even murder. So why is it so often excused and normalized? Our society treats rape so lightly it has become almost impossible for survivors of sexual assault to share their stories, let alone bring their rapists to justice. It's time that we stop empowering rapists and start empowering the survivors of sexual assault. It's going to take all of us to make this change. We cannot ignore this problem. We must end rape culture. Thank you.